Welcome into the Scoop on bowl season presented by Hellmann's Mayonnaise, the #1 selling mayonnaise brand. With bowl season underway and Christmas around the corner, you don't want to show up to the party empty-handed or with the veggie tray. So head to hellmans.com/recipes for all your inspiration. I'm your host, Travis Rockhold, and joining me today is Landon Walker, member of the 2014 pit crew for Willam, Byron, and Hendrick Motorsports, but also played football at Clemson. I'm going to try to be civil with you.
Yeah, let's do this.
I don't like Clemson. Luckily for you, my hatred for them has dropped down.
Yeah.
So I think we're going to be good, but how you doing today?
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me, guys. I appreciate it. You know, we're going to find, I think, a happy medium for the understanding between Ohio State and Clemson fans today. I think that's what I came here for. So I'm hoping that we can find that mutual agreement where we're all on the same page and we respect each other's fan bases. I don't know how we can get there, but maybe it's a more than a one show type of thing. We'll figure it out.
We'll work on it. I think we can because we've got other enemies to worry about.
I agree.
Joining us also is Alex Timms, who we affectionately call Tampa Timms. How we doing?
I'm doing pretty well. I'm here to make sure the fans know that there is a third side to make money out there. You can bet on these games. You don't have to stick to your team to make some money. So hopefully I'm the unbiased opinion of the group here.
Yeah, Timms' favorite team is the one that cashes him money.
Exactly.
So
I like that.
Are we going into bowl season swinging up, or are we chasing right now?
Oh, we're swinging up. This past weekend we were 2-0, so we're feeling good.
Wow.
You had Army-Navy over?
Army-Navy over, and then I went against myself and bet Western Michigan on the spread. So
2-0.
And I'm 2-0.
So I'm just going to send me what you do, and I'll do that.
100%.
Okay, from now on.
I really hope you're betting Ohio State then.
We'll see.
To go how far? That's the question.
Yeah.
All right, so we got 12 teams in the playoffs this year, boys.
Yeah. It's a weird
Not
year.
too long ago, the AP poll was decided national champion. Then we moved to the BCS. Then we got to 4 teams. 4 teams I don't think was enough. Do you think was enough?
No, absolutely. I don't think so.
No, but it was the perfect tease.
It was perfect. 10 years. We're at 12 teams now. Top 5 conference champions got automatic bids, with the 4 highest ranked getting playoff byes. Oregon, Georgia, Boise State, and Arizona State are all sitting waiting to figure out who they're going to play. The other teams, Indiana versus Notre Dame, SMU versus Penn State, Clemson at Texas, and Tennessee at Ohio State, are our first 4 first-round playoff games. We're going to get into it in a little bit, but just general thoughts. What are we thinking about with this current format and where the teams got seeded out?
Yeah, I don't personally like the buys. I mean, I think that's something that's going to have to go away in the future. I'm not a huge fan of it. I'm not so sure that it's a longevity thing with the buys. I don't know how it's a fair system just to be based on the teams that you play, your strength of schedule, how that's determined to give those buys. Obviously, being a conference champion is huge, but we're going to go back and forth on this. I know whatever your path, your trajectory is to get into that playoff. And that used to be, we talked a little bit about this before. It used to be something where you had to beef up your schedule, in my opinion. And I think that the game's changed a lot with the playoff. You look at some of these teams that have got in, just based upon winning games, and it's a good path to get in there. But I mean, are we really seeing the best of the best? Is there some teams that should be in there that possibly have played really good football this year that aren't getting in just because of they have more losses than a team that's undefeated in an easier conference?
Tim's, as a fan of just the sport and no real team, what's your thoughts?
Well, I think the conference championships are probably going to be, thrown away. I don't like Boise State and Arizona State. Yeah, congratulations, but do they really deserve a first round bye based off their strength of schedule?
Thank you. I agree.
I don't think so. And like Landon said, the buys, I don't like them either, but I especially don't like if we're deciding them just based off a conference champion.
I'm okay with the bye. I don't like that a conference champion just because you won your conference. Boise State and Arizona State should get their automatic bid. I like that because it gives value to those leagues, but they should not be getting a bye.
No, I agree.
Absolutely not. I mean, Arizona State, it's an easy – whoever gets in that bracket, which it looks like Ohio State, or Clemson and Texas. The winner of that game is going to play, that Arizona State team, which, let's be honest, they're not proven. So, I think that's your easier path, at least in the semifinals. You're going to make it there easy without having to, obviously play your first tough game, Texas, Clemson. If you can get by Texas, which is a good football team, Clemson's going to have an easier path to get there.
All right, so let's just move on to the first round playoff games. We're going to start Friday, December 20th at 8 p.m. is Indiana making the short trip from Bloomington to South Bend to play Notre Dame, 8 p.m., ESPN, ABC 1. I think it's going to be exciting because it's not an NBC game for the first time in like 30 years at Notre Dame. That's going to be interesting.
That is interesting.
But Indiana, nobody saw this coming. Timms, how many games did you bet on Indiana to make you money this year?
I probably had like 7 or 8, and I think that the only game I lost them was probably the Ohio State game. It was the first loss that they didn't really cover or anything like that.
So to my point, he jumped on them early because he realized they were good. But it's also, who did they play?
Exactly. Yep. And the Big Ten, I mean, you really don't know. It's similar to a lot of these other conferences. You don't know who's really good until we get to the course of the year where it's championship time. I mean, the Ohio State-Michigan game, I mean, who would have thought that would have happened in that conference? So, I mean, obviously being a rival, that's a different game. But, everybody thought Indiana was world beaters until they played Ohio State.
On the flip side, Notre Dame, they lose to Northern Illinois. I think a lot of people were like, they're done.
Yep, I was for sure.
Then they just went and basically beat everybody by more than a touchdown. They just cruised. But do you trust them?
No, I don't know. I mean, it's a yes and no for me. I don't want to. I'm not a Notre Dame guy by no means, but I'm also, I'm thinking, okay, when is the time that they're going to get there? When is that Notre Dame team going to finally prove themselves to advance like they've been talked about for the whole year? Right? Are they going to be the team that they think they are, or are they going to be the team that we all want them to be? Because I'm not a believer in their postseason. I mean, let's just be honest; they haven't done anything in a long time.
Timms, where are you at with trusting?
I'm not a Riley Leonard fan, and I don't trust him.
Yeah,
it's not the same. He can go off like we've seen after the Northern Illinois loss, but then there's also games where it could be a Northern Illinois game, and if you're going up against a team like Indiana, which I think their defense is their strength, that kind of scares me a bit. But also at the same time, you got a bunch of James Madison transfers playing defense.
I'm going to get you to buy in on Riley Leonard in just a second.
All right, do it.
Let's start with Indiana. Curtis Rourke, transfer in from Ohio University. I think he had a great season, but when he had his one big moment to shine against Ohio State, sacked 5 times, threw for 68 yards.
Yep.
How big of a concern is that now they have to go on the road again? Because Cignetti, their head coach, talked about how the crowd was an issue and they struggled. They got to do it again.
Yeah.
How big of a worry is that?
That's a huge worry. I mean, you got to question the ability of that offensive line. Are they going to be able to hold up in an atmosphere like that? You're talking about playing on the road, and it's going to be a tough environment. I mean, those fans are ready to see what those guys can do in the playoffs. I think they all want it. Are they going to be able to withstand the early noise that's going to come from that game, because you're going to get it as soon as it starts. I mean, that's how can you quiet that crowd? I guess that's probably going to be their whole motive this week, is trying to figure out how to get into a situation where they can be successful.
When you have to transition to a silent count, how hard is that?
It's very difficult. I mean, the hardest part of the silent count, I think a lot of people don't really realize, is when you're in a game and you're having to rely on that. You're at a complete, as an offensive tackle, offensive guard, center's trying to make the silent count depending on what you're doing, a clap or the head nod, whatever. There's a bunch of different things. But as a tackle, I feel like you're at a complete disadvantage because that defensive end's got a much better read on the ball than you do. You get into those situations, and that's why you're going to try to hopefully, and I was going to stay away from those situations where third down and long. You've really got to try to prevent yourself from being in a really bad situation with a silent count. Is the whole on the road mentality. I think from an offensive line standpoint, you got to be able to run the ball, stay away from third down and longs, because it's a complete disadvantage for the defensive ends are just, they're hawking down and going.
So, Timms, you've heard all this. Mm-hmm. Curtis Rourke's player prop for passing yards. It originally was 192 yards and a half. It's actually moved up to 198 and a half. If you're betting or you're thinking about it or giving out advice, when you hear all this, 9 sacks against Ohio State and Michigan, less than 70 yards passing against Ohio State, can Curtis Rourke hit that number?
No. I'll say no because I think they're going to have to run the ball to have any success, and I think they're going to pound the ball to try to have that success. But the problem with the number is that I can also see Notre Dame being up 21-0, 24-0 or something, and now you got to throw the ball.
Yep.
So you can get some garbage yards in there as well. But like you say, threw for 68 yards against Ohio State. I see this kind of going that way. It's the second best defense he's played.
He has hit that mark in like 8 of the games, but back to who they played, it's against nobodies, and I think Marcus Freeman, Notre Dame's head coach, a defensive coordinator, played linebacker.
Yeah.
I think he's going to be dialing up blitzes because they could not handle OSU's blitzes.
No, 100%.
I agree. You know, my worry is with this game is Notre Dame looking like world beaters. That's my worry. I feel like we're going to be in a situation where they're going to beat Indiana handily, and then Notre Dame's going to look like, oh, these guys this is a national championship team right here, and I don't think they are. I don't. Again, back to your original thought, I don't believe in them yet. I'm not a complete hater because I think that they really turned it on after they lost to Northern Illinois, but I don't think that there's a chance that they're going to potentially play in the national championship game. They can prove me wrong. We'll see what happens.
There's a playoff game being played in Notre Dame. That's still pretty sick.
That's very sick.
That's awesome.
That's going to be a great atmosphere.
Well, that's the one cool thing about these first-round playoff games is you're getting home playoff games. Think about the locations that we're getting them at. South Bend with Notre Dame, Ohio State, Happy Valley, Texas, like some awesome places to have these games at.
Yeah. I mean, that's the cool thing. Okay, the playoff itself gives that advantage for home field. I love that. That's what college football is about. Never been a fan of neutral sites in college football, especially when you're talking about playing at AT&T Stadium or playing in those games like, the Florida-Georgia game. Hate that. I think the home field advantage is the beauty of college football. So I love that we're doing that.
The neutral site games and the non-conference games should be banned.
Agreed. I agree with that. It's what are we doing? It's like
they play in Atlanta.
It's also a Georgia neutral site game is Atlanta, so that's not really a neutral site game.
Exactly. Anytime you play in the state of Georgia, and it's not like Clemson playing in that game when they early in the year, we knew it was not a home field advantage whatsoever.
Yeah.
It's the SEC teams that always do these neutral site games.
It is
that they're not neutral.
Yeah, and I'm sure they don't like it either, right? Because you take away the fun part of college football, the pageantry, the fans, the student sections. That's what's fun about it. So why are we doing neutral sites? Obviously, there's a lot more people involved than us, smarter people, more money people.
I don't know if smarter.
Can't buy beer. That's not smart.
That's true. That takes away for sure.
Yeah. So let's go to the other side. Notre Dame. You mentioned Riley Leonard. Mm-hmm. So I'm just going to get to it right now. He has rushed for a touchdown in 9 of 12 games, Timms.
Mm-hmm. We're betting that. That's a hammer bet. That's just playing the statistics.
Minus 140, though.
That's not bad. My price always is like minus 150 is probably as high as I'll go on a singular bet. But I do like him 2 touchdowns at plus 370. Because look at his passing yards prop, 181. So they think he's running the ball. And if they're up and they're winning, they're going to run the ball. And if he's down by the 1-2 yard line, he's big enough and he's got that Josh Allen kind of effect that he can just take it himself.
So you talked about them running the ball. They've only thrown the ball 30 times twice, and one was in their Northern Illinois game. So from an offensive line standpoint, when you know that you're running the ball, what are the conversations like in the offensive line meeting rooms?
No, those guys are happy. I mean, look, we talked about it just a few minutes ago, but the hardest part of being an offensive lineman, necessarily at home, is being able to have to pass protect for a long period of time, not having that time to give to your quarterback. I mean, you eat that up when you can do it, but running the ball, being at home, I mean, that's the ultimate, win for an offensive line. So if you're able to get the ground game going, obviously you're going to allow Riley to do a lot more things with his feet, with his arm. I think you're going to be able to see a lot more downfield action versus, not having that run game take effect in the game. So Riley Leonard, to your point, I think that he's going to be pretty good in the air, but I actually think that he's really hard to defend because you don't know how he's going to be able to, when that pocket kind of collapses, is he going to be able to get out of the pocket and make some plays, after, he should have been sacked. So we'll see what he does.
At what point in the game do you realize as offensive lineman, like, we've got him?
I think it's a first half thing. I think you kind of we're kind of on the sidelines after the first few series, like, okay, these guys are soft or maybe they're tough and it's going to be a tough game. But I think you get to the halftime and you're like, okay, we know that it's going to be hell the rest of the game, or that, all right, we've got this in the bag. Like, we're moving these guys. It's not, there's nothing they can do to us that we haven't seen already. So you feel like you have the advantage.
Is there a better feeling than just pushing a man down?
No, there's not. That's the best feeling. It's the best feeling. It's the best feeling when you feel like you have the ability to just win that front. Because I mean, there's games that you could definitely know that, like, this is going to be a dogfight the whole game, right? You're not. There's no way that I just hope I can push him that way more than he can push me back this way. That's the goal. Like, I mean, I don't want to get too off topic, but when I played against Sioux in the Gator Bowl, I mean, I was like literally going into that game like, man, please God, just don't make it embarrass me. You know
Don't
what I mean?
make
Just
not top 10.
Don't let this
Yeah.
guy embarrass me, and just no sacks. If that happens, great. So that's kind of the mentality, right? If you go against a dog, but if you're facing a team that's like, okay, we're gonna be able to easily manipulate these guys up front.
No one's going to be facing Ndamukong Suh in these games.
Thank God.
But what was the strategy and game plan for you guys going into that? Because, he was a Heisman finalist, just a game wrecker. So how do you game plan around one player like that?
A lot of double teams, a lot of running the ball to the opposite side. And it's not really anything against the guy who's going against him. You're really looking at it from a perspective of, hey, this guy is going to be there. Like, you're probably not going to be able to move him very far. Let's try to open the lanes. Let's kick him out with a guard. Let's do some different things in order to help our run game. We're probably going to have more backside cutbacks if we're running a ball, towards his side. You just know that's what's going to happen. So you're really hoping to get to the next level on the backside as an offensive lineman versus trying to move that guy 3 yards down the field. Probably not going to happen.
All right, Tim. So before we move off this, we're going to get your thoughts. We're not going to make you necessarily have to predict all these games with the betting, but if you were, what are you leaning? Notre Dame right now, 7.5 point favorite. Over under is 51.5.
I would probably lean under and Notre Dame. I think Notre Dame wins this game, and I think it could be anywhere between 7 and 10, which makes the 7.5 spread a little bit shaky for me. But 51 seems like a lot of points. I don't know how Indiana scores maybe more than 13, 12.
Yeah, I agree with that. I agree. I think it's a safe bet.
Yeah. You're worried if Notre Dame can put up like 30, 40 points by himself, but I don't know. I think it's a lower scoring game.
You don't have to go betting here, but I'm assuming you're picking Notre Dame.
Oh, absolutely. I think Notre Dame wins the game. I think, Tampa man over here, I think it's safe to say that the under is probably a good play from a betting perspective. I don't do a lot of that, but I think, it's going to go one of two ways. I think it's going to be a pretty close game, and Notre Dame's not going to be able to get out to the lead that they thought they would. Indiana just seems to stick with them the whole time. It's a home state game, so I think that's going to have a little effect of the game. Both teams are, really playing for the state of Indiana, so I think it's going to be interesting to see how that goes.
All right, so we're going to move to Saturday now. There's only one first-round playoff game on Friday. Saturday, the first game, SMU at Penn State, noon. For your safety, do not ask Penn State fans what they think about playing at noon. They're not happy. Don't ask about it, but they can still be loud at noon. SMU, I think, is the one team that has to deal with a true home field disadvantage. What are your guys' thoughts?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I think when you're going and you're talking about the teams they played on the road this year, Louisville being one of the toughest games they played on the road, they haven't seen anywhere near the crowd noise they're going to see at Penn State, 100+ thousand fans. I mean, that speaks for itself. I mean, you could see SMU was a little rattled in the ACC championship game, and it seemed like they just couldn't get – rolling on all cylinders there, especially in the first half. So I feel like,
and Bank of America is not Happy Valley.
Not Happy Valley. No, not you didn't have quite the, again, talking neutral site. You didn't have the away field disadvantage for them. So I think it's just, they're going against a brick wall here.
Tim's, how does home field advantage impact your betting at all?
I think it's huge, especially in college football. At a place like Penn State, that is one of the best home field advantages in college football, and especially like SMU, they have zero experience in coming to these places.
Yeah.
Like
Away games this year, SMU had Nevada, Louisville, Stanford, Duke, Virginia.
Yeah, exactly. And those aren't necessarily those.
If you added
Virginia's got to be tough.
If you added up the total capacity of all those away games, if they sold out, which big if, it was like 275,000. Ohio State, Penn State was 111,000 on its own.
Exactly. That's a different level of noise that you can't emulate in practice. Nothing like that is just, that's different.
It is. It's insane.
Have you ever had to practice with noise to emulate?
Yeah. And
how annoying is that?
It's so annoying. And it's like you try to emulate it in practice. And look, that's the best you can do in practice. You get the speakers, crank them up. You try to get the same effect. It's really hard to emulate that on the road feel, especially when you have crowd noise like that. I mean, one of the toughest environments I ever played in personally was probably Auburn, and it was a national championship year, so they were obviously really rolling on all cylinders. Cam Newton was there, so it was one of those situations where I felt like we just were guessing the whole time. I was guessing when the ball was snapped. To be honest with you, I was like, "Oh, guys, I don't know." It's just hopefully I just get it right. I'm just gonna watch the guy in front of me.
And Jordan Hare is a place of just nightmares. I feel like that place is just cursed for the opponents.
It's a tough place to play, and I guess that's an SEC versus a Big Ten argument, talking about which is 100,000 plus fans, a lot louder than Jordan Hare. Who knows? I mean, I always get into the debate, like which stadium is more vertical. I feel like that always comes up because it matters. You go to Virginia Tech where they have like 60,000, I think, or something, but it's one of the loudest places you can play just because of the shape of the stadium. You're closer to the field. I think all those things kind of come to fruition to see which team's going to really make enough noise.
Yeah, you go to Michigan, 100,000+, but it's so wide, it's basically like a toilet bowl.
Yeah.
And the noise kind of just disappears out of the stadium.
And I've heard that a lot, obviously. I'm not a Big Ten guy. You know that. So, like, when you talk about the Ohio State-Michigan game, everyone talks about how Michigan's not that loud. I'm like, how is that possible? It's like that many people, but I guess, like you just say, like it's the way the stadium shapes around the field. It's loud, but it's obviously it's not going to be a factor as much as maybe Penn State might be.
All right, so we have James Franklin, 1-18 in top 5 games. Now, he's lucky this does not hit that stat.
Yep.
Timms, if you're betting on a Penn State game in a big game like this, does a stat like that give you pause?
Yes and no. Like
they look good against Oregon a couple weeks ago, though. So like,
yeah, that's what gives me a lot more confidence. They could put 37 up on Oregon and compete in the Big Ten championship when they really backdoored their way there is pretty impressive. And like I said, SMU, I don't even know where SMU is. Like
it's in Dallas.
Okay, that's great. But I bet 90% of the audience doesn't even know what that is. So,
that's great. Don't they wear like the D on the helmets, which is kind of weird to me?
Yeah,
it's like they're the Mustangs, and I'm like, because they're Dallas, but I'm like, I don't understand.
So
like,
I'm a little worried though, because the last time Tim's questioned where a team was located at, we bet against that team and they ended up beating. I forget who it was.
I forget too.
And you screwed us. And so now I think I might bet SMU just because of that.
If the reasoning is I don't even know where that is, that's probably not a good reason to bet it, but I still do it.
Yeah, Southern Methodist University. It's in Dallas. They had the death penalty, folks.
Oh, really?
They were the original pay your players. They had the program was killed. They came back and then they wanted to join the ACC to get in a big league.
Yep.
They paid the ACC, said, we don't even care about your TV rights. We got more oil money than anybody. You want to talk about a team that's going to stay here for a while? SMU's got money.
SMU deserves this, all right. After the death penalty, that's a good point. You brought that up because let's talk. You do that to a team now. What's the comeback like? Is it faster or is it slow as it took them to get back to where they are now? It took them a long time.
They had the Pony Express going like.
Was that the 80s?
Yes.
Okay, yeah. So like the 80s, they were. SMU hasn't been relevant since then. So we're talking about how much that affected them until NIL and transfer portal. Now I think it's easier to bounce back.
I think I'm going to bet SMU now just because.
Just because of my reasoning?
Yes.
All right, you lose that money.
All right. Hey, look, I don't know if I would bet SMU. I'll be honest.
Exactly.
There might be
that team looks scared to start the ACC championship.
I agree. I don't. The quarterback he's got wheels, man. But I just don't know if he can do it there.
You know what it is? It's a different atmosphere when people are just heckling you the entire game. That's got to get in your head. Like I've never had that type of pressure, but I can imagine I'd crumble if 100,000 people are screaming at me.
You have like Mo Bamba playing the entire game.
Like come on, like
and they
that's
have that
frightening.
like tiger roar sound.
Yeah.
For what it's worth, I want SMU to win, but that's not going to happen. I don't think. I really want to be an SMU guy. I'm come on, guys.
Are you rooting for them because of this now? Are you going to just like blind ACC?
No, I'm not. It's because I think they're a team that they fought pretty hard this year. They've went through a weaker schedule. That's debatable, I guess. But it's
they're in the ACC.
Yeah, exactly. That's all right. We're going to start off like this. That's cool. I'm good with it. But SMU, they're a team that you just want to see do well. I don't know why. Don't ask me why. You watch them play, you're like, man, these guys, man, let them beat Penn State. Come on, but it's not going to happen.
I find myself saying that's cute. Like whenever they do like a nice play, like cute for them, good for them.
Those guys
let the big boys take over.
That's true. They're not there yet. I think that's the difference.
Yeah.
They're not there yet, but I do want to see them put up a good fight against Penn State. I do think Penn State's going to walk away with it.
So you mentioned Kevin Jennings, their quarterback. He actually didn't start in their first loss against BYU, then got inserted as the starter, was undefeated until a loss to your Clemson Tigers.
Yeah.
How do you, as an offensive lineman, you have a quarterback that likes to play kind of out of the pocket.
Yeah.
What's that like when you know that after 2 seconds, my quarterback may not be where I'm blocking my guy might end up screwing us?
It's difficult. You don't want to say that it puts them at a disadvantage. I hate using that, but it does essentially because your whole thing as an offensive lineman is trying to create that pocket, right? You're trying to push the defensive ends upfield. You're trying to stay kind of firm in the middle. So when you have a guy who's just he's just kind of get Patrick Mahomes, he's going to find it. I'm not saying he's Patrick Mahomes, but you feel what I'm saying. It's a very bad comparison. If he's willing to get out of the pocket and make plays, that's a good thing for the offense. Not necessarily good for a guy who's trying to, hold a guy for 3 seconds on the edge.
Now, the one thing that could get interesting is if Drew Aller gets hurt, Penn State starting quarterback, because their backup quarterback is in the portal and will not be playing.
Yeah.
Timms, for Drew Aller has a little injury prone. He didn't finish the Wisconsin game, has a bum knee and ankle. Does that make you hesitate?
No.
What kind of injury as a gambler do you go, okay, now I need to worry?
If he goes into the game, it's a game time decision. He's questionable. They're not sure about other players' snap count, all that stuff. That's where I kind of worry. It's definitely a concern, but I can't go into that game thinking that, okay, what if he gets hurt? I mean, anyone can get hurt at any time.
So, like, you weren't really worried when Ohio State lost their center, right?
No, I wasn't. Because you could dictate off, like, the line. If the line moved a ton of points the other way, then clearly Vegas thinks that injury is a big deal. Or if you see this thing go from 8.5 down to like 6-5, then is Drew Aller even playing? Like, what's the deal?
The one bet that I do know you have for this game, highest scoring first round game. Mm-hmm. You took this one, right?
I did. I think a plus 175.
I like that.
Yeah.
I do.
I think SMU scored against Clemson, which is notoriously good defense. I don't know about this year, but
we'll see.
And Penn State put up 37 on Oregon, which is the number 1 team and undefeated. I think and this is the highest total that Vegas had listed. So, I mean, I'm going with it.
So is this more also, you would bet this anyways, but the best odds or the lowest is 175. And so you're just like, at that number, I'm going to throw something on it.
Yeah, exactly. Plus, like, if you look like the over under, I think it's minus 114 or minus 110. So, yeah, minus 110. So I'm banking on that being the highest game. So the over is going to hit, and I get plus 175 as a price.
Yeah. SMU can score. I mean, it's obvious. You watch them, they can move the ball quick when they need to, but it's, like the question we started the whole thing with them is they going to be able to do that on the road? We'll see. But they do have athletes. Can they hold up from the offensive line perspective? We'll see too.
Well, that's the thing you mentioned. We talked about Ndamukong Suh. Penn State doesn't have him, but they do have Abdul Carter.
Yes.
Who he's gonna just wreak havoc on that offensive line.
He's a stud. And when you got a guy like that, you're game planning around him all week. You're trying to figure out, hey, how do we make this guy, limited to as many sacks as we can? It's a difficult thing to do when you're playing against a guy like that.
Well, I guess we'll move to this next game. I really don't care about it too much.
Here we go.
Clemson at Texas.
Yep.
Hook 'em.
Oh boy, you're okay.
4 p.m. on TNT and Max. I feel like this is right where Dabo wants. They're no longer the hunted. They're kind of back to the hunter role.
Yeah.
He's thrown out the Roy bus and pizza parties and all this stupidity.
It'll make
stuff.
you run through a wall, man. You'll run through a wall for that guy. All right.
So, but this is where Dabo thrives at, though, right?
Yeah. I think so. Being the underdog, going into this game in Austin, Texas, tough road environment, but nothing these guys hadn't seen before. I think I'll be honest, my first reaction when I saw this game, I was pretty excited. And most people would think I'm crazy.
You are.
I'm very excited because I feel like Texas is a team, and I'm not a Texas hater, first off, but I don't think that they are up to the same par as all the other SEC schools yet. I think they're trying. I think they're playing well. But look, the 2 games they played this year, ranked opponents, Georgia, they lost to them twice. How many other teams have they played that's been ranked? You can throw the SEC jargon all you want, but I just think that this is a good position for them to be in, especially with a team that's hungry. They went into the SMU game not even really expecting to be in the ACC championship, and came out of that alive. I think that it should have been a lot of big. The score should have been a little bit different than it was. Second half wasn't quite as a full game as they should have played, but I think you're going into a Texas environment with your quarterback being from there. I think it gives them a lot of juice.
Timms, what's your just general thoughts on this game?
Well, I think of all the games, maybe besides Tennessee, Ohio State, because they're pretty even, this is like, if you're Clemson, the huge underdog, I'm not worried about them at all because the program's been there, head coach has been there, and Cade Klubnik's played in big games. Like, He's played against teams like Texas. Like, this isn't like a total, like, oh, this is just talent against talent. This is, I think 11.5 is too much. Like,
that's ridiculous.
That is a ridiculous spread. This should be, like, I think closer to 7. And Texas really hasn't put up a ton of points on teams. Like, they're good defensively, but they're not really, like, outscoring teams like crazy.
I'll give you that. I think the spread should be lower, but so how much importance does experience have? Because none of the Clemson players, as I'm far as aware of, have been to the playoffs.
Yeah.
2020 would have been your last.
Yeah, true.
Texas was there last year and almost got to national championship. How much does that matter?
It does. I think you got to put yourself in the position where confidence is everything when you're dealing with, these young kids. Let's be honest. I mean, 18 to 22-year-olds. I mean, they got to have confidence. Experience is going to promote that, especially when you're talking about a good Texas football team. But, I like the odds just because I feel like Clemson is going in, again, as the underdog. But, the inexperience in the playoff situation, it'll have some effect. But, again, I think when you're talking about a hungry team, going in to play a team that, is coming off of a SEC championship loss is the Georgia game is – how is that Texas team going to respond? I think that's all kind of what we're interested to see. And how is Clemson going to respond coming off SMU game with a field goal walk-off? So I think it's going to be really the tale of two different conferences, a lot of different teams these guys have played. Who's played the more talented teams? I think, you could probably say Texas. But, it's just going to be I think all that's out the window when these two play each other.
I think that's the one thing to note is Clemson wasn't going to be in the playoffs had they not won. So they're kind of on that high right now.
Yeah.
Now we'll see how it goes. The other thing is the players don't have the experience, but Dabo Swinney is one of the few active coaches that does have a national championship in his back pocket. And he's got 2 of them.
Yeah.
So he can lean on that. Now, the interesting storyline, Cade Klubnik, Clemson's quarterback, is going back home.
Yeah.
He's from Austin, Texas.
Yeah.
Played there. Played against Quinn Ewers in the state championship game.
Yeah.
How do you manage those, the nerves? If you're an offensive lineman, would you go to the quarterback and talk to him, or is it only if he comes to you? Like, how do you?
A game like this, I feel like the guy's got to come to you. But, he's going to have to manage those emotions. I mean, that's a very emotional high for him. And being in this game, playing at home, there's a lot of things. You can't let the emotions get in the way of the game plan and of the standard you've created. Cade Klubnik last year versus this year, I think it's a completely different quarterback. I think you got to look at the way he's just advanced himself. And the first year he played, I think every Clemson fan would probably be like, I don't know. But he's just taking a little bit of time to develop. But now he's a guy that I think you can trust back there. I think you can trust him on the road. I think he's going to make some good plays. I mean, you go back to this year, the Pittsburgh game, being able to win with his legs. And, a lot of people, barely beat Pittsburgh. But, Pittsburgh's a good team. They beat Clemson the year, one of the years they won the national championship. I want to say 18 maybe. Could have been 16 or 18. But anyway, the ability that he's going to have with his legs alone, I think he's very good on the road.
That run was electric against Pittsburgh.
It was.
It made me a Cade Klubnik fan.
I
It
agree.
was such a good run.
Well, man, that's one of their, I think that's one of their good things about the offense with Riley calling plays. I think they have the ability to do that. I think that they're going to kind of read the defense, and that's probably going to be something they're going to lean on is his legs, because the defensive line for Texas, I think they're going to be really getting after him, and I think their goal is just going to make him uncomfortable.
You mentioned Garrett Riley. He's been there since 2023. How much is that the reason why Cade made that jump, having that same OC for back-to-back years?
Yeah, so I think last year being his first year, there was a lot of, Riley was trying to figure out what he had, and I think he's trying to get the guys in place he needs, and it takes time. I mean, it's college, and, not using the portal like these other teams, it takes time to develop your talent, which I'm a fan of. I know a lot of people are portal people, but I'm a fan of developing the old school way, and you got to compete, right? You do, but I do think that he's a type of offensive coordinator that has developed this quarterback to kind of fit his system, and I think you're seeing that on the field right now as they're kind of learning each other. This year's been a much better year.
I don't think you're necessarily wrong, but I also think the coach can instill that. I look at Ohio State this past year. Yeah, they lost to Michigan, but the leaders of the team were Seth McLaughlin, transfer center, Caleb Downs coming in. So I think if you get the right players, and I think Dabo's going to start to open the portal door open a little bit and get
you have to a few guys, right?
If you see a glaring hole, go fill it.
Yeah. I'm not against that. And
but I hate the mass exodus.
Agreed.
I'm with you on that.
Yeah, it's just tough, right? I mean, it's tough for the game. It's tough to see guys that you're like, man, why wouldn't that guy just hang around another year? But obviously, when money plays a, you're going to be able to get guys anywhere you want.
Timms, how worried are you of Clemson being able to move the ball? Their defense is just really good. They've given up 20 points, I think, 3 times this year. 2 of them were against Georgia. Clemson and Texas had a common opponent in Georgia. Clemson gave up 7.1 yards per play. Mm-hmm. Texas had 4.1.
It's definitely a concern, but I really do think Klubnik's the X factor, because he's got the ability to move the pocket. He's got the ability to scramble out, and they got to contain him. And that could be super frustrating. I've never played football, but watching it, watching a mobile quarterback that can do that and extend the plays and get those first downs is got to be so frustrating.
I know it's frustrating for my friends in NCAA on PlayStation, so I got to believe it's the same.
It's exactly the same.
It's got to be the same.
Yeah.
So 20.5 though for Clemson team total. Which way would you lean?
Ooh. This is a really good line, I think. This is really good. If this was 17, I'd take the over. I think 20 is pretty much. I'd actually not even bet this. I'd bet the plus 11.5 before I'd bet their team total.
Yeah,
because I don't think Texas has their offense is that great.
Yeah, can Texas score 30 points?
Yeah, so like
I don't know.
If you're telling me it's going to be a shootout, I don't know. I could see it. I could not. I could see this being a late shootout. Like it's a grind for the 3 quarters, and the fourth quarter they're just kind of airing it out.
Yeah, I think it goes back to see how Arch Manning affects the game. I think they're going to have a pretty good stance with Ewers. I just don't know when they throw in a completely different quarterback, that makes it really challenging for a defense. I mean, I don't know if you're going to be able to defend 2 guys, and especially one that's pretty good with his legs and one that's good, through the air. It's just going to be interesting to see.
The one thing that would worry me if I'm a Clemson fan is you're giving Steve Sarkisian 2 weeks to game plan. And
he's a dangerous guy, man.
I still have nightmares of him somehow getting Devontae Smith in motion against Ohio State and getting him on a linebacker. He finds ways to just get his guys the ball and let them make plays. And you're giving 2 weeks. I
know.
I'd be worried about that.
I'm a little worried, but I'm optimistic. We're going to shock the world. I think the Tigers are going to do something that no one is expecting. In this game.
Where are we going to be watching the game at? Can you watch? Do you need to watch at home, or are you able to go out to public and watch it?
I don't know if I can watch in public because there's a lot of people that I just can't be around when I'm watching a game. I mean, for instance, I was watching the ACC championship game with some family. Love them to death, but it's tough. It's just tough when you're the one who's on the, kind of riding on everything. And I'm not betting any money on the Tigers. I never did.
But you play. That's more than putting
Agreed. So it's tough. I like to watch it by myself just because maybe my wife's there, and then if she tells me to get out and go to the other room, I will. That's kind of where I'm at. It's just I get into it, and I just have to be able to see what's going on. I usually turn the noise down on the commentating just because I'm not a huge fan, especially when the momentum starts to swing. I can see it visually. I don't need to hear it. I don't want them to and then I think my least favorite thing with commentating is how, they talk about, hey, this guy's, oh man, he's been great in the situation. Oh, he just made the kick in the ACC championship game, walk off. And then I'm like, oh God, they've screwed us. Here we go.
Yeah.
It's just, you don't want to hear that right before a kick, right?
Tim's, I feel like you're more of a chill fan for the teams that you root for.
Yeah, I am, but I hate the from the betting standpoint, when it's the first quarter and there's a sack and I'll get a text it's dead. I hate those fans. I'm with Landon. I'd rather just watch by myself in silence because unless it's the fourth quarter and it's a BS call or BS play, don't text me that because there's so much time left.
It sounds miserable, but you need it.
Yeah, guys, he's talking about me.
You're one of those people. You're one of those. You just follow Travis on Twitter when there's Ohio State game going on.
Well, not even Ohio State, but we have a group text. And if we'll have a bet that going in, it's going bad in the first quarter. I'll be the first, guys, that's not looking good.
Yeah, I think we bet on Missouri one day, and the backup of the
Brady
quarterback
got hurt,
and he goes, "It's dead. It's the first play. He got hurt." And, I agree, but they're also playing Auburn, so I mean,
agreed. It's difficult when you're in that position.
But I'm with you. I can't watch out at bars, and for the Tennessee game, I think I'm just going to watch it with my dad. Lately, I've gone for Michigan games. I've been at a friend's house or whatever, and it's not working. I need to get back to the basics.
Let's get down to brass tacks, though. Where were you when Michigan planted that flag? And what was your reaction to that? Because I need to know that from a Ohio State fan. I've spoken with one. I just need to know what's the cumulative, fan reaction to that.
Very little talking. Then they interviewed Khalil Mullings, and there was some F-bombs yelled. The few people that were around me were concerned. I left. I then sent a text later that night, said, "Hey, I don't think I said thank you for the hospitality. Thank you now."
Awesome. I love that. I love it.
When we lost to Oregon this year, I was at my best friend's house and watching with him and his wife. Will Howard slides, loses the 1 second. I grab my stuff and I leave. Don't say goodbye. Don't say thank. I don't handle it well. I'm still not over losing to Texas in 2005.
I love that though. I respect it. I really do. I think your reaction is completely justified.
This will make you feel good. I don't remember the end of the Clemson Ohio State game in 2016.
Did you walk outside and
No,
throw
but
something?
my closet door was broken the next morning.
Oh my God.
I respect it, man. You know, I like the guys that are so into it that they, again, like you're talking about, it affects you. You're like,
It ruins the next day. So, like,
Yes,
after the
it
Michigan
does.
game, the next day, I binge watched like a TV show that wasn't sports. I don't consume anything sports, and like I'm probably gonna be driving back to North Carolina after the game, and which means I need to have music and non-sports podcasts ready for that drive.
yes. Well, the worst thing, right, is especially when it doesn't go your way, is hearing all the reactions, especially when the ones mostly are going to be the ones you don't like.
I don't want to bring up bad games for you guys,
Just
but
do it.
what's like a bad road loss like and trying to get home?
Worst experience imaginable. No, not always, right? It depends on how you played. I think it depends on the situation, you know, how happy the coaching staff is with you. You feel like when you have those games, I can, you know, I don't want to go into too much of a rabbit hole, but like we played NC State on the road in 2011. We were like pretty highly ranked, top 10 teams. Hopefully you guys don't remember that game. And, you know, we ended up getting embarrassed. And NC State was like, maybe had 3 wins. I'm not sure of that, maybe 3 or 4. And like, so it was completely just, we looked like we didn't know how to play football.
Oh, this was during the Clemsoning era, wasn't it?
It was very much so. And then that, now that you figured that out,
Sorry.
No, it's close
And Landon
up.
hates me.
No, it's okay. We'll get to a better point when we end it. But it's like, you know, we got killed against an NC State team that we had no business like playing in the same game. And I remember the post-game press conference, and they asked me what my opinion was of the game, and I was like, you know, we had no business being in the same. We shouldn't have been this close. They didn't like it because I was like pretty much saying that NC State had no business beating us, and I was honest.
Accurate.
I was honest, and they nobody liked it because I didn't show them respect. And I'm like, you know what? At the end of the day, they beat us. What other respect do they need out there? And I was getting flipped off my whole way walking out of the stadium, and they were playing like, this is how we do it. And I'm like, this is not how you usually do it. Just today is how you do it. And it was just the most embarrassing. So that, to not go too much in the rabbit hole, that was the worst probably on the road loss I've ever had. And that was terrible. The week of practice, you just knew it was going to be bad, right? It's just one of those games.
So, okay, we can now transition to
Yes.
my worst loss that I think worst loss in program history. Let's move to the Tennessee Ohio State game, the final game of the first round, December 21st at 8 p.m. ESPN ABC. I don't know if Ohio State can get off the mat. I mean, they got embarrassed the last time we saw them play a game against Michigan. Flag planted, everything. Like, what's your guys' thoughts on Ohio State right now?
Oh,
What do you think?
You want me to start?
Yeah.
All right. Okay. I think Ohio State is a team that, again, we started off the year with thinking that they were going to be the team to beat, one of the teams to beat, other than Oregon.
Natty or bust, was everyone said.
And I think that was, you know, I think they still have the talent that's going to be able to do that. I think you look at any other team, their talent is just overwhelming. The amount of talent that they have on the field at any point in time. Can they get everybody pointing in the right direction? I think that's the question you got to ask yourself about Ohio State against a team that, you know, has a pretty good offensive line. Tennessee, we've seen the trajectory of Tennessee obviously going positively upward. The last couple of years, they're headed in the right direction. Are they ready for an Ohio State team that's kind of probably really pissed off about the Michigan loss? And you know, I don't think I'd want to be Tennessee in this game going into that place after a game like that. So I feel like you're going to get an Ohio State team that's going to be ready. They're going to be pissed, which is worst case scenario. How is that going to factor into the game with the Tennessee offensive line, with the ability to move the ball? Are they going to be able to defensively stop Tennessee when they need to? There's a lot of question marks I have, but I do think Ohio State's ready for this opportunity.
Yeah, I think that's the biggest thing is how can Ryan Day get this team focused? There's a law that came out now, like based off this high emotion affair that happened a couple weeks ago. Like there's a lot that happened. That's a lot. You know, Jack Sora's probably still yelling at somebody.
Yeah,
like,
I agree.
Like, I mean, that's a lot to get over. And Ryan Day's got to rally him back up. Be like, hey, we still got this great football team. What are they, 11-1 draft or 10-2?
10-2.
So, and they only. A close game against Oregon, which it might come down to. I mean, hey, they can win the national championship. It's just
absolutely.
It's kind of getting this Michigan game at outcry. That's just kind of putting a cloud over this great team that they got. So it's really up to Ryan Day, and it could be for his job if he can get them to rally the troops against Tennessee.
I think you bring up a good point about Ryan Day because I want to ask you. I feel like the team, they take whatever emotion Ryan Day is showing.
Yeah.
And I think in the Michigan game, he coached tight, and therefore the players, like, how much do you feed off your coaching staff?
A lot. I think when you see a coach that's not really, I don't want to use the word into the game because obviously he was into the game, but just seemed a little tight, seemed like the play calling was a little bit off. You felt like Michigan just had the upper hand. I don't know. I feel like that it's pretty easy to read a coach. So when you have a coach that you're willing to run through a wall for, and go out there and you're like, he's motivating you. I don't think Ryan Day's that guy. I don't think he's the guy who's, I think he has the motivation side in him, but I don't think he can just be on all the time, if you will. So I think that he's going to be able to get those guys ready. I think what happened with the, going back to the flag being put in their field, I think those guys are pissed, and I think they should be. And I think, Tennessee's going to, I wouldn't want to be Tennessee going into this game, but just because of the emotions they had from the Michigan game, and they still have a really good opportunity to win the national championship, even with the losses they've had, which, again, Michigan loss, not great. Oregon loss is going to be one that we may see again. Who knows?
For the record, this flag planting law that this one idiot is trying to put in, no Ohio State fan supports it. No Ohio I would vote this guy out of office.
It's part of the game.
Listen, I'm okay with Ohio State players fighting. You put the flag there, like, we're fighting.
It's great. I love it. I mean, that's college football. Mm-hmm. You don't see in the NFL. You don't get to see the pageantry. You don't get to see the emotions. Like, we go back to seeing that happen. I mean, how many flag plants happened that day? Like 8?
Yeah.
Something like that.
It all started with Baker.
Did they all talk on Instagram? Like, how did that happen? That's what I want to know, first off. That's the first question I asked myself. I was like, Baker obviously was one of the initial guys.
And he did it at Ohio State, and people.
I love that. Sorry. I love that.
But Baker's a trash talker. That's why it made it so good, too. Like, he backed it up, and then.
It was that one was random as could be.
Yeah.
I think he got mad because we beat them at his place the previous year, even though we didn't plant a flag. But I will just say this, and we'll move to the game now. I would have rather beaten Michigan than win a playoff game.
Wow.
That's wild to me.
That's wild.
It's a meaningless regular season game.
I don't know. We can go
for you.
forward after that one.
Yeah.
I don't know.
It's so wild.
Well, you've got this cloud of cheating hanging over. Did they? Doesn't matter. They've beat us the past 3 years. COVID year, they got sick.
Yeah.
So it's been since 2019 that we played them and beat them.
So you win the national championship this year. It's a losing season for you.
Then I get Michigan fans going, yeah, but we beat you.
Was the last time Ohio State beat Michigan, was that
19?
Was that the Big House or was that in the Horseshoe?
That would have been at their place.
Really?
That was with Justin Fields.
Okay. So 4-0. That's nuts to me, by the way. Sorry, I didn't mean to bring up that bad. That's a salty wound.
I would just
It's wild that you think that. That's a lost season.
I get it, though, because I hate losing to South Carolina from a Clemson's perspective, but I think
you live at 365.
We get to see, I think, just having the perspective of, hey, look, we lose to them guys and then you make the playoff, which you're like, it's kind of a travesty in itself because that's a good South Carolina football team.
But did South Carolina win the national championship the previous year? That you got that part. Like,
that's a good point. It's a way worse of a feeling when you have Michigan beating you in that situation.
And it was, you should have won. But all right, let's move forward for my sanity. So now they got Tennessee. Ohio State's offensive line, though. How worried are you? This is like their fifth iteration. They're talking about moving guys around since the Michigan game.
Yep.
They've got their best center who won the Remington.
Yeah.
He's out.
Yep.
Their left tackle, who's going to go pro and probably first or second round draft pick, he's out.
Yeah.
Like, how much does that create a problem?
That's tough from a offensive line perspective when everything's based off of just feel and communication and just being able to gel with your guys over the course of a season. I mean, injuries happen. You get one guy out here, one guy out there. But, I mean, having to do that many modifications to an offensive line throughout the season, it's just tough. I mean, it's difficult for everyone, not even them, because you're talking about the guys in the backfield, because what a lot of guys don't see is when you're communicating the offensive line to the defensive line and you're trying to figure out, okay, who's the mic? The running back's got to be on the same page as these guys, right? He's got to know where the blitz is coming from. So they're spotting blitzes, and the team's kind of working together from that offensive line perspective. So I think it's a huge disadvantage for Ohio State, but being at home kind of takes them back in the advantage standpoint. I think that, being able to just kind of get the job done and just gel together enough to get it through. Yeah, I don't think they're going to be a Tennessee offensive line anytime soon with the guys that they have up front, but I think the home field advantage plays a huge part in this game, and the ability, maybe just to use that emotion to get them over that hump.
On the flip side, OSU's got a good defense, Timms, but Dylan Sampson, the best running back in the SEC, Now, Ohio State stopped running backs, but against Oregon and Michigan, they allowed a 100-yard rusher.
Yeah.
Dylan Sampson's player prop is 92.5 yards.
I mean, I watched Cleo Mullins run down Ohio State all day.
I mean, it was on like 30 carries, but he still did it.
Yeah, but still, it don't matter. Gets to the number, right? Yeah, I like that. I like 92.5. I mean, honestly, if Tennessee's going to have any success, I do think it's Dylan Sampson kind of like, getting the ball rolling there. Because, I mean, Nico's kind of inconsistent.
Yeah.
And if they get one-dimensional, I think Ohio State can take advantage of that. But to Lennon's point earlier, like, they got some angry guys on that Ohio State team. And the best position angry is defense.
Agreed.
You can take out a lot of aggression. So that's, it's going to be tough to overcome that. If they come out angry, if they calm down, again, Ryan Day, you got to keep them angry, I think.
I don't think Jack Sawyer, you mentioned it, I don't think Jack Sawyer has been happy since that game. I mean,
I think he's been pacing around his house or his dorm, whatever, for like at least 2 weeks.
He went from this career interception, they're probably going to build him a statue, to losing. And I think that aggression is going to be there. And Jim Knowles, after the Oregon game, has dialed up blitzes, exotic ones. As an offensive line,
exotic, I like that. Blitzes.
Like, what's that like when you don't know where the blitz is coming from?
It's terrifying, right? I think you have to be. You're on the edge the whole game. Like, especially when you have a defensive front that like is moving the whole time. You've got blitzes kind of jumping in and out. I think it puts you at a complete disadvantage. I mean, you prepared for, and you got the defensive, exotic blitzes you talk about that you don't expect, right? That's the worst case, is when they decide to, hey, we're going to play this defense at halftime, and then maybe we're just going to do something completely different. So you have to be a really well-versed group up front to be able to handle that, to be able to communicate, back to being a good offensive line, being able to help your buddy out and say, hey, look, it's coming this way. And if you're out there just kind of flying by the seat of your pants and you're not used to the pressure, you're not used to the cumulative, confidence you have as an offensive line group, it makes it a difficult day.
They now have iPads on the sideline or tablets.
Yeah.
How much would that have helped you?
I don't know. I mean, I've seen this. It's like, I don't know if I would like a coach coming up to me and showing me what I did live. I don't know.
I never got it. Like, I know I f***ed up.
Yeah,
like,
exactly.
I don't need to see it.
I don't need to see it.
Yeah.
I definitely feel like it's an advantage for a quarterback to see the defense. I don't necessarily see, and maybe it could be, I think from offensive line, hey, this is what they're lining up in, this is what they're going to. You have an advantage, but I don't want to be able to see my ass get whipped after it's already happened, like you said.
Yeah,
you see that a lot.
Get your legs taken out.
Exactly.
See that in slow-mo.
Hopefully they missed that one, but they didn't. They didn't miss it.
Tim, I have another player prop I'd like to throw at you and get your thoughts, because I'm like the player prop king.
Yeah.
So Jeremiah Smith, everybody knows how good he is. He got screwed on the Blintekoff, but that's another show to talk about that. I think Tennessee has to double him, but that leaves Carnell Tate single coverage. His player prop is 49.5 yards. He's hit this number in 8 of the games this year, in the last 4.
Yeah, I like this. I like this a lot, because even if you just watch the Michigan game, he got targeted a lot. And, I don't know if his number went over, but
it did.
It did? Okay, good. But for me with these, like, I look at the targets. Like, if he's getting opportunities, it doesn't take much for that to go over. And, with your 2 stud receivers, I think a lot of attention goes to that. If you're the third guy, you can be wide open all day.
Agreed.
So I think I love that prop, Trav.
All right, so who's winning this game?
I think Ohio State wins it. I really do. I think Homefield's going to play an advantage. I think you're going to have a team that, again, is going to play with high emotion. And I think Ryan Day is going to be able to get them really fired up about what happened the last time they were on that field. So I think Ohio State's going to walk away with it. I don't think it's going to be an easy win for them. I think it's going to be Tennessee's going to put up a fight, and I think fourth quarter you're probably talking about Ohio State kind of sort of moving away from it.
I've seen the girls that go to Tennessee. I love Tennessee.
Yeah, it's a great place. Tennessee's a beautiful, beautiful college.
But I think Ohio State wins.
The other thing, it's going to be, now neither team has an advantage with this. It's going to be cold.
Yeah.
They're talking.
That's Big Ten football.
They're talking
that's
like 20
difference.
degrees feels like 9.
Wow.
Yeah. That's a difference for Tennessee.
That's advantage Ohio State, obviously.
I don't think it is, though.
Really? Because it's that different.
Well, here's the thing. Jeremiah Smith is from Miami. Caleb Downs is from Georgia. Now, the one position I think it could affect, Nico.
Yeah.
He's from California. All these players have never been in the cold, but he's definitely never been out in it. And this is like his first, one of his big national moments.
Yeah, but I mean, look, how many times has Tennessee played in the snow? I mean, you look at the Tennessee-Michigan game. Was it last year or was it 2 years ago? Maybe it's this team so far removed. But I feel like Ohio State's seen that a little bit more, maybe.
Yeah.
You have the teams that have seen that Midwestern cold. I think Ohio State's one of them. I don't play any in the South with Tennessee. Like you said, maybe it's not quite as a disadvantage for them as it, could be an advantage for Ohio State. But at the same time, I think you're going to have two teams that are just going to be sort of a dogfight. This might be one of the closer games, I think, in the playoffs.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
All right. So what's our no spreader? Just our predictions for the 4 games again. What are we going with?
Let me see.
Notre Dame, Indiana.
Notre Dame.
Notre Dame, for sure.
SMU, Penn State.
Penn State.
Penn State. Yeah.
Yeah. We're going to agree on everything. This is going to be great.
We might. Yeah.
Oh, Jesus. And then Clemson, Texas.
Not that one. We want to agree on that one. Go ahead.
I'm gonna go Clemson.
Wow.
I feel one of these is gonna be an upset, right? I
Yeah.
think this is the game.
I think so as well. I think Clemson's going to shock the world. I know you don't think that, but
I hope not. I actually might root for you guys only because a man can only take so much SEC bull.
agree. Thank you.
Yeah.
It's just too much. And I think
And it's going to come from like Auburn fans and Florida. Like it's not even going to come from the Texas fans.
South Carolina fans.
Oh,
Yeah.
The worst.
Like when have they done something?
Yeah, exactly. I think Clemson's going to prove that Texas is a SEC, wannabe, in my opinion. I'm going to say that. I probably have a lot of people coming after me for that, but that's true.
All right, so we will be back to preview the national championship game. So we're going to fast forward it. Who's going to be in the national championship game?
It's going to be a wild playoff. I'll say that.
If Ohio State beats Tennessee and they get to Oregon, that's a really interesting game.
So FanDuel right now, hypothetical line, it's Oregon 1.5.
Wow.
Tennessee would be 4.5.
I think I like Ohio State to get there.
Really?
I do.
I don't
I don't know
not
if they
against
win,
it.
but
Well, playing Oregon a second time is going to be interesting. They lost to them once, very close game. I think, I like Oregon to get there, to be honest with you.
Mm-hmm.
I think Oregon's going to get there, and I think Georgia.
I agree. That's what I'm going. That's my 2, I think.
that's the thing about Georgia is they really don't have to worry about their side of the bracket. The
Yeah.
other side's kind of weak.
Georgia got lucky.
And where
Yeah.
I subscribe to my thinking, especially in college football, coaching is great, but at the end of the day, it's not X's and O's, it's Jimmy's and Joe's.
Agreed.
Yeah.
And you look at Indiana, Notre Dame, SMU, Penn State, Boise State. Those are the teams that are in Georgia's side of the bracket. How many of those players did Georgia truly recruit?
That's true.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think probably
I can tell you right
handful.
now, there's not one on Indiana's roster.
Oh,
Yeah,
no
no,
doubt.
0.
For sure.
Boise
It'd be
State,
at Georgia.
outside of Ashton Genty, Georgia wouldn't take one of their players.
Yeah.
SMU, a couple, like they just and they're backups. That's the other thing. It's like they can rotate and get their guys fresh. So in the fourth quarter, they're ready. Indiana can't rotate.
No.
Yeah. And no pun intended, the Dogs have been in some dog fights this year. And they played some good football teams, and they played good football. They've also played average football. I don't think Carson Beck is
Is he healthy?
That's another good point. If he is healthy, if he gets healthy-ish, will they be able to compete? He hasn't played the year that everyone thought he was going to have.
No.
So, but Georgia's still got to have. They got the defense. They got the team to.
And
it's a
their
team to
backup
beat.
quarterback's name is Gunner.
It's
That's worth one victory in the playoffs.
Chosen one.
Yeah. That defense is they can win games by themselves.
Defense is good.
Tim's, we've got national championship odds. Are there any teams that you would think about putting something down on before the playoffs start?
I would say Notre Dame, just because we talked about. I think they moved from 850 to 700, so a lot of people have this similar thinking. But that side of the bracket is very weak, right? So if they get past Indiana, which we expect them to, Georgia with the Carson Beck thing, they kind of have a nice route to get to the Final Four, if you will, and then and move on. So that's not a bad value play.
Do you have any other playoff future bets?
I do. I have Oregon to win a playoff game at -130. I know I just said Ohio State's going to move on, so I totally contradicted myself. But -130 for
you have to balance it.
But yeah, hedge. I got to hedge myself here. But -130 for the undefeated #1 seed to win one game is kind of wild.
Well, see, that's why I look at their money line's probably going to be higher than that, or it's right around there anyways.
Yeah, exactly.
So I hope people aren't listening, but I have that same bet.
Okay. Hey,
wow.
listen, you got to do what you got to do.
I also took OSU under 1.5 wins.
You really emotionally hedge against your team. You have no faith in your team.
I like it. I think if Oregon's able to get there, though, in Georgia, likewise, I think that, God, has Oregon seen anything like a Georgia defense?
Yeah.
It's the same song and tell we talk about every year with these teams from the Big Ten, no offense. When they play a big-time defensive team like Georgia. That's if they can make
But
it.
we saw Ohio State play Georgia a couple years ago.
True.
And
Yeah.
their missed field goal and targeting call away.
I agree.
from
It was
beating
close.
them.
It was close. Yeah.
And-
So maybe it's just brainwash.
And Oregon's coach, where'd he come from?
Yeah. He's the guy.
He came from the SEC world.
He's the guy. Well, exactly. So he's able to tune them up, right? I think he's a great coach. I mean, I have a lot of. If I was going to put money on it, Oregon would be the team to win it all. But we'll see how that goes.
Yeah, they're tough. Their jerseys are always tough too.
They
Sometimes I
are.
feel like they care about the jerseys more than the game plan, but
It used to be that way, but they're just a wagon right now.
they are. They really are.
Thank you to everyone listening in. And again, do not show up to any parties empty-handed. No veggie trays, no fruit trays. If you're at least going to show up with a veggie tray, buffalo chicken dip made with real Hellmann's mayonnaise. If you need inspiration, go to hellmans.com/recipes. I guarantee, I'm telling you, if you go there with a full stomach because you're going to be hungry checking it out. We will be back to preview the national championship game.
Can't wait.
See ya.